In the remote Bavarian countryside, where dense forests swallow the horizon and winter snow blankets the world in an unnerving silence, a farm stood isolated from the nearest village, its inhabitants living a life of quiet routine and hidden tensions. It was March 1922, and the Gruber family had no idea that something, or someone, was watching them from the shadows. Strange footprints appeared in the fresh snow, leading straight to the barn but vanishing without a trace of departure. Tools went missing from the shed, only to reappear days later. And at night, footsteps creaked overhead in the attic, as if an unseen presence paced above their beds. The family dismissed it as wind or imagination, but as the days grew colder, an inescapable dread settled over Hinterkaifeck farm. What if the danger wasn't outside, but already inside? What force could drive a killer to slaughter an entire household and then linger among the dead, tending to the animals as if nothing had happened? This is the Hinterkaifeck mystery, a case so chilling it has haunted Germany for over a century, blending rural isolation with unimaginable horror. As we peel back the layers of this unsolved massacre, prepare yourself. The truth, or lack of it, might leave you questioning every creak in your own home. Nestled half a mile from the tiny hamlet of Kaifeck, in the district of Weidhofen, Bavaria, the farm known as Hinterkaifeck was a modest but self-sufficient homestead. Built in the 19th century, it consisted of a sturdy wooden house, a large barn for livestock, and outbuildings scattered across a few acres of land. The name, Hinterkaifeck, translated to behind Kaifeck, emphasizing its seclusion, far enough from neighbors that screams might go unheard, close enough that gossip traveled like wind through the trees. In 1922, Germany was still reeling from the Great War, with economic hardship and social unrest rippling through rural areas. Farms like this were lifelines, but also breeding grounds for resentment, secrets, and desperation. The Gruber family had owned the property for generations, but under Andreas Gruber, it had become a place of whispers and unease. Andreas, 63, was a stern patriarch, known for his temper and frugality, ruling the household with an iron fist. His wife, Kazalia, 72, was quiet and enduring, bearing the weight of farm life without complaint. Their daughter Victoria Gabriel, 35, a widow, lived there with her 2 children, young Kazalia, 7, a bright-eyed girl full of innocence, and little Joseph, just 2, the baby of the family. Rounding out the household was the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44, who had arrived only that day, seeking work in a time of scarcity. Life on the farm was harsh, dictated by the seasons and the unending chores, milking cows, tending pigs, chopping wood, and maintaining the fields. But in the weeks leading up to that fateful march, an undercurrent of fear began to erode the family's sense of security. It started subtly, with Andreas noticing odd occurrences he couldn't explain. One evening, as dusk fell over the snow-covered grounds, he discovered fresh footprints in the virgin snow, deep, deliberate impressions leading from the forest edge straight to the barn door. He followed them, heart pounding in the cold air, but they stopped abruptly at the threshold, with no tracks leading away or inside. Who could have approached without leaving? Andreas searched the barn, finding nothing amiss, but the incident gnawed at him. Days later, a set of keys to the house vanished from the usual hook, only to reappear mysteriously on the kitchen table. Then came the newspaper, a fresh edition of the Munich Illustrated Press, left folded in the barn, containing an article about incest in rural families. Andreas hadn't subscribed to it, hadn't bought it. Where had it come from? The implications chilled him, given the rumors swirling about his own family dynamics. As winter tightened its grip, the disturbances escalated. Maria Baumgartner's predecessor, the previous maid, had fled the farm 6 months earlier, claiming she heard footsteps in the attic night after night, pacing, creaking, as if someone was living up there. She begged Andreas to investigate, but he dismissed her as hysterical, even searching the attic himself and finding nothing but dust and old hay. Yet, after her departure, Andreas began hearing them too, soft thuds overhead, like boots on wooden beams, always in the dead of night when the wind was still. He confided in no one at first, but the sounds grew bolder, sometimes accompanied by faint scratching or the rustle of movement. One night, a heavy snowfall muffled the world outside, but the attic noises persisted, rhythmic and deliberate. Andreas grabbed his rifle and climbed the ladder, lantern in hand, the flame casting flickering shadows across the rafters. Again, nothing, no intruder, no animal, just an empty space with a musty chill. But as he descended, a tool, a mattock, the farm's heavy pickaxe-like implement, went missing from its place in the tool shed. It would turn up later, but not before the family felt the weight of an invisible presence pressing down on them. Victoria, the daughter, seemed the most unsettled. Widowed since her husband Carl Gabriel died in the war, or so the official record stated, she had returned to Hinterkaifeck with her children, seeking shelter but finding only tension. Rumors in the village whispered that Joseph, the toddler, was not Carl's son, but the product of an incestuous relationship with her father Andreas, a scandal that had led to fines and jail time for both in 1915, though they denied it. Victoria had dreams of leaving the farm, perhaps to sing in Munich, where her voice had once drawn admiration. But money was tight, and Andreas's control was absolute. In those final weeks, she spoke of a bad feeling, as if the farm itself was cursed. Little Kazalia, the granddaughter, complained of noises from the roof, drawing pictures of dark figures in her school notebook. Even the animals grew restless. The dog barked at nothing, the cows lowed uneasily in the barn. Andreas, ever the skeptic, installed extra locks on the doors and kept his rifle close, but he refused to seek help from the village, fearing ridicule or exposure of family secrets. As March 31st approached, a Good Friday, the family prepared for the Easter weekend, unaware that the shadows they sensed were about to consume them. The night of March 31st, 1922, was bitterly cold, with a fresh layer of snow blanketing the ground, muffling sounds and erasing traces. The killer, whether a vagrant hiding in the attic, a vengeful neighbor, or someone closer, struck with calculated precision. It began in the barn, where the family was lured one by one, perhaps by a noise or a call for help. Andreas was first, drawn out to investigate a disturbance among the animals. As he entered the dim barn, lit only by a lantern's faint glow, the mattock came down with ferocious force, striking his head and neck, blood splattering the hay bales. He collapsed without a cry, his body dragged into a corner and covered with hay. Next came his wife Kazalia, worried by his absence, calling his name into the night. She too was ambushed, the tool crushing her skull as she crossed the threshold. Victoria followed, perhaps hearing the commotion, her screams cut short by repeated blows that nearly decapitated her. The killer's rage seemed focused, methodical, each strike delivered with brutal efficiency. Young Cazalia, the 7-year-old, was last in the barn, her small frame no match for the assault, her throat was slashed, and in her final moments, she pulled out her own hair in agony, strands clutched in her tiny fists. The killer didn't stop there. Moving into the house, he, or she, crept through the dark corridors, the floorboards creaking underfoot. Maria Baumgartner, the new maid, had retired to her room, unaware of the horror outside. The Matic found her too, smashing her head as she slept, blood soaking the bedsheets. Finally, little Joseph, the toddler, in his crib in Victoria's room. The blow was swift, ending his short life without mercy. The house fell silent once more, the only sound the distant howl of wind through the trees. But here's where the nightmare truly begins. The murderer didn't flee. Instead, they stayed. For 4 full days after the slaughter, someone lived on the farm as if it were their own. Neighbors noticed smoke rising from the chimney each day, assuming the family was home. The cows were milked, the dog fed, the pigs tended to fresh bread was baked in the kitchen, meals prepared and eaten from the family's stores. The killer slept in the beds, walked the halls, perhaps even gazed upon the hidden bodies in the barn. Who could endure such proximity to death? Was it the thrill of evasion, or a deeper, more sinister motive? Discovery came on April 4th, when the family failed to attend church on Easter Sunday and missed a scheduled visit from a mechanic to repair their motor. Concerned neighbors, including Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a local man with a complicated history with Victoria, led a search party. Schlittenbauer, who had once been fined for slandering the Grubers over incest rumors and was rumored to be Joseph's real father, was the first to enter the barn. The sight that greeted him was grotesque, bodies stacked like firewood under hay and a dog mattress, heads pulverized beyond recognition, blood dried in pools on the floor. The air thick with the stench of decay. Moving to the house, they found Maria in her room, her skull caved in, and Joseph in his crib, his tiny form still and cold. The party recoiled in horror, the isolation of the farm amplifying the terror. Police from nearby Schrobenhausen arrived hours later, securing the scene as news spread like wildfire through the villages. The investigation began immediately, but the 4-day delay had allowed any trail to go cold, literally, as fresh snow had fallen, erasing potential footprints. The Bavarian police, led by Inspector Georg Riengruber, combed the farm for clues, but the killer had been meticulous. The murder weapon, the Matic, was found bloodied in the barn, part of the farm's own tools. No fingerprints in 1922 technology, but footprints in the attic suggested someone had indeed been living there, fresh straw bedding, food wrappers, even human feces in a corner. Had the killer been squatting for weeks, waiting for the moment? The footprints in the snow from earlier matched no one in the family, leading toward the barn but not away, as if the intruder had entered and never left. Missing cash from Andreas's wallet, about 1,000 marks, suggested robbery, but valuables like gold watches and jewelry were untouched. The family's dog was found chained and beaten, perhaps to silence it during the killings. Neighbors were questioned. Schlittenbauer, who arrived suspiciously quickly and handled the bodies oddly, became a prime suspect. He claimed innocence, but his prior disputes with Andreas over land and Victoria's paternity raised eyebrows. Another lead, Carl Gabriel, Victoria's dead husband, rumored to have survived the war and returned for revenge over Joseph's parentage. But his death was confirmed. Vagrants in the area were rounded up, but alibis held. As weeks turned to months, the case grew colder, the farm's isolation mirroring the investigation's dead ends. Autopsies confirmed death by blunt force, with Victoria and her mother suffering the most blows, suggesting personal rage. Young Cazalia had lived for hours after the attack, her hair pulled in agony, a heartbreaking detail. Joseph and Maria died instantly. No sexual assault, no theft beyond the cash. The killer's post-murder behavior baffled experts. Why stay? To destroy evidence. To revel in the act. Or because they lived nearby and needed to maintain normalcy. In 1923, the farm was demolished, the site plowed over, but locals avoided it, calling it cursed. Skulls from the victims were sent to Munich for psychic readings, desperate measures in an era blending science and superstition, but yielded nothing. In 1955, the skulls were lost in a flood, closing another door. Theories have swirled for a century, each more unsettling than the last. The attic dweller hypothesis posits a vagrant or escaped power hid there for months, driven mad by isolation, snapping on that fateful night. Footprints and noises support it, but how did they vanish without trace? The neighbor angle points to Schlittenbauer. He knew the farm intimately, had motive, and his actions at the scene were odd. He touched bodies before police arrived, potentially contaminating evidence. Some believe he fathered Joseph and killed to silence the scandal. The incest revenge theory ties back to Andreas's abusive history. Perhaps a relative or victim sought vengeance. Supernatural whispers persist, ghosts of the war, a cursed land, but evidence points to human evil. In 2007, a police academy thesis reviewed files, concluding Schlittenbauer as the likely killer, but without proof, the case remains open. Modern forensics offer glimmers. In 2020, DNA from preserved hair suggested no outsider blood, but degradation limits certainty. The matic, still in evidence, could be retested, but Bavaria considers it closed. Yet, the enigma endures, a testament to how isolation breeds terror. Hinterkaifeck isn't just a murder, it's a psychological abyss, where the killer's lingering presence turns a simple farm into a house of horrors. Who walked those halls after the blood was spilled? Why feed the animals, light the fires, as if playing house with the dead? These questions linger like the snow that buried the tracks, inviting us to wonder if some evils are meant to stay hidden. As the shadows of Hinterkaifeck fade, remember, history's darkest corners demand exploration. If this tale of isolated terror gripped you, leaving that chill down your spine long after the credits, show your support. Hit the like button to help spread these stories. Drop your theory in the comments. I love reading them and replying to the most intriguing ones. And if you're ready for more heart-pounding dives into the unknown, subscribe now, turn on notifications so you never miss the next enigma. Stay tuned, the past has more secrets to whisper.